Hey everybody, Dan Sfera, www.theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Really quick, I got a question today, and this is before I head out to the gym. Got to work out. I've been noticing my blog post, been getting progressively chubbier cheeks in every video, so gotta do something about that. But anyways, the question I got today, and again, I love it when you guys send questions and interact with us because, I don't know, we feel like we cover what's important, but then again, we don't really know what's important because, we're too deep in the industry to really understand what the lay people out there are having questions about. So, and when I say lay people, I don't mean that you're uneducated or anything. I mean that you're not involved in the clinical trials industry. Because, I mean, unless you work inside the industry, you're not going to know too much about it. But anyways, the question I got the other day from Facebook again. So it's looking like Facebook's a pretty good engagement tool. I mean, Twitter, we interact with a lot of people there, but Facebook seems to be where the real questions are coming from lately. So that's interesting, but that's just a little side note. The question from this individual was, how can we trust the data that comes from a clinical trial? In other words, how do we know that the researchers are not just, making up the data or embellishing it or, fluffing it up? Here's the thing. Let's say Pfizer runs a trial to see whether drug X works for whatever condition. Okay? They're not going to do it themselves. They outsource the study to research sites. Let's say it gets to phase 2 and phase 3 where we're testing it on people who actually have the medical condition that drug's supposed to treat. Well, Pfizer really gets, and any other drug company who's in the same situation and sponsoring a clinical trial, they don't really get involved as far as, how we report the data. And, this is outsourced to research centers like South Coast Clinical Trials and like hundreds, if not thousands of others at a time for each trial across the world. So the researchers at these sites are usually doctors, are mostly doctors, I should say. They have their own private practice where they treat their own patients, real world patients. And then the idea is that a small percentage of these patients would want to join a clinical trial for whatever reason. So it's a numbers game. But these doctors, they get a standard contract for the trial. They don't get any incentives, for making the drug seem like it works when it really doesn't. There's no incentives. The doctors get paid the same amount whether the drug is a huge success or a huge failure. The doctors get paid the same exact amount. So there's no incentive for them to skew the results. Furthermore, let's say a doctor in Texas is doing the trial for Pfizer, along with many other doctors. Okay, every doctor's got to sign what's called a financial disclosure form, where they have to list, how much financial interest, if any, they have in the company. So let's say Dr. A here in Texas has $50,000 or more worth of Pfizer stock, and he's doing a Pfizer's trial. There could be some potential conflict of interest, especially if it's a huge pivotal study where the results of that trial can affect the stock price. In that case, the doctor will indirectly benefit from the clinical trial. So the IRB, which are the ethics committees, and the FDA, they know this. And there are safeguards in place called financial disclosure forms. And if you check that you own more than $50,000 worth of, a company who's doing a trial that you're working on, you have to check yes, that you do have financial incentive, and they'll be keeping a close eye on you. It doesn't mean you won't be able to do the trial. What it means is that they'll be keeping a very close eye on you. And for the most part, most people check no because, nobody keeps that much money in, one particular stock. But there are cases where some people do, and that's why these safeguards are in place. But as far as a drug company paying a doctor a lot of money just to make up results, you know, especially for industry-sponsored trials like phase 3, phase 4, phase 2 studies, it's not going to happen. The doctor gets paid the same whether the drug is a huge success or a huge failure. So that's really important for the public out there to know that, yeah, there's been cases of doctors, making up their own studies, but those were usually when they were getting grants from the drug companies. Those were not necessarily for the clinical trials that we're talking about here in terms of phase 3, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 industry-sponsored trials. Those were more for publishing rights, and that's a whole different aspect of clinical trials that I don't know that much about. So I pretty much specialize in the industry-sponsored trials, which is where the real meat of this industry is anyways. But as far as a doctor being compensated a lot more because he reports that a drug is effective when it's not, that's not the case. The doctors get paid the same amount of money whether the drug fails or whether it succeeds. So in that regard, they have no incentive to skew the results. The only potential risk here for a doctor messing around with the results, like I said, is if he also owns a lot of stock in a particular drug company. But that's why these safeguards are in place and enough regulations are in place to hopefully prevent something like that from ever happening. So for the most part, I mean, you're not going to see doctors faking results just to get paid more because it's not possible. Anyways, hope this helps. And, if anyone out there has any information about the investigator-initiated trials where some faking of the data, I mean, in some cases, doctors have even made up entire studies without doing them. That's a whole different story. And they're doing that for publishing rights and things like that. But yeah, if anyone out there has experience with these type of trials, let me know. We'd love to interview you, and we'd love to feature your thoughts and experiences on our blog here. So anyways, www.theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Thanks a lot.